All right, so now I'm going to go over number 9. To be fair, we did not spend a lot of time on this in class, so I'm not surprised if you have a bunch of questions on this. So I'm gonna, the notes that we took on this day are from, I believe it was October 18th and 19th, if you want to find that in your table of contents. But we did like these review questions on the back, and then on the front was like a mini lesson over this converting from standard form to vertex form. So I'm going to reference those notes, and I've got the steps over here while completing number 9. So the directions say to transform the quadratic equation from standard form to vertex form, specifically using the completing the square method. There's lots of different ways you can do this. Like you can definitely graph it and go from there, but using the completing the square method requires a different skill set. So we're going from standard form. So that's the equation they gave us. And it says to put it into vertex form. So once again, vertex form is that y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. And if you don't have that memorized by now, it is on your formula chart. So the steps I'm going to take, I'm looking at them over here. You're going to separate basically all of your x's from your constants. So I'm going to use parentheses to do that. So I'm going to have y equals parentheses 2x squared minus 12x close parentheses plus 11. So you just separate your variables from your constants. And then since there's an a value greater than 1, we need to factor that out. So my a value is 2. So I'm going to factor that out. I'm going to have y equals 2 times x squared minus 6x plus 11. Okay, so just factored out the GCF between 2 and negative 12. All right, now we're going to find the b value in our equation. That's after you factor out the GCF. So in this case, my b value is going to be this negative 6. So b equals negative 6. And then we're going to apply this formula to it. So it's going to be negative 6 divided by 2 quantity squared. That's going to give me, if you work that out, negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Negative 3 squared is 9. So that equals 9. All right, so that number I'm going to add and subtract in step 3. So I'm going to add that number on the inside of the set of parentheses, and I'm going to subtract it on the outside of the set of parentheses. So I'm going to have y equals 2 times x squared minus 6x plus 9 on the inside of parentheses. And then on the outside of the parentheses, I'm going to subtract that number. The only thing that stinks is, like, remember at the very beginning, we factored out a 2. So when I added 9 right here, I actually ended up adding 2 times 9, so 18, which means on the outside of my parentheses here, instead of subtracting 9, I'm actually going to subtract 18. Tricky, tricky. All right, and then now I'm going to just factor the trinomial that's inside the parentheses and simplify the constants on the outside. So I've got this trinomial. I'm going to factor that. That's going to become x minus 3 times x minus 3. I'm going to bring down the 2 that was factored out before. And then these I'm going to simplify. So 11 minus 18 is going to be negative 7. And then here, Remember, we're trying to get it into this vertex form. So I have an a value, I have a k value, but this x minus h squared is kind of missing. So this x minus 3 times x minus 3, I'm going to simplify that into a square. So it's going to be 2 times x minus 3 squared minus 7. And now I've got my equation starting in standard form and ending up in vertex form. Really easy to check your work here. Graph the original expression, graph the original equation, graph your new equation. It's just a different form, so they should be exactly the same on the graph. They just have a different type of equation.